Hi guys, this is your day one little math video. Before we went off to break, we were talking a lot about place value in numbers. We were talking about how many tens were in a number and how many ones were in a number. We did a lot with comparing numbers, what number is greater, what number is less, and putting numbers in order from greatest to least, and also number patterns. So we're going to review a little bit of that today. I'm going to give you a few little practice problems at the end of this. So it's going to be a quick little video. So first thing, just as a review, before we went on to break, if I have this number on my board, what number is this first of all? I'm going to give you some time to think about that. Okay, so in this number, which is the number 14, it has how many tens? 1 10, and how many ones? 4 ones. Okay, so in the number 10, it also, if I wanted to look at that as an equation, okay, to make the number 14, so to make my number 14, I've got a 10 down here, plus my 4 ones, which equals my number 14, okay? So we've got our 10 and our 4 ones, which equals 14 all together. How many tens? How many ones? And all together, we've got 14. Also comparing numbers. We talked a lot before we went on break with comparing numbers. So I'm going to give you guys 3 different numbers, and we're going to talk a little bit about our 3 different numbers. Okay, so my first number that we're talking about is this one. Okay, so I want you to think about what that number is. And our second number that we're going to be looking at is this one. And our third number that we're going to be looking at is this number. Okay, so looking at these 3 numbers, we have the numbers 17, 14, and 19. How many ones are in this number? Okay, so there's 7 ones in that number. How many ones are in this number? And there's 4 ones in that number. So looking at these 2 numbers, our tens are the same. So we've got a 10 here and we've got 1 10 in the number 14. But looking at your number ones, we've got 4 here and a 7 here. Which one of those is the bigger number? Which one is greater? Okay, so just looking at our ones, we can tell that 17, because 7 is greater than 4. Okay, so 17 is greater than 14. Okay, and then we also talked about how much greater this number 17 is than the number 14. You guys came up with a bunch of different strategies for figuring out how much greater numbers are. Okay, one of the strategies that we came up with was looking at that smaller number and counting up until we get to that bigger number. So for example, we're at 14. I'm going to count up in my head 15, 16, 17. So we know that 17 is 3 more than 14. Okay. Also looking at our numbers, so if we look at our greatest number over here, which is 19, we know that 19 is our greatest number because looking at that, again, as we come back to this, each one of these has a 10 in it. Okay, so if we are looking at our ones, we've got a 7 ones in 17, 4 ones in this number, and 9 ones in this number. This number, that 9, is a greater number, has a greater number of 1. So if you guys were to use your ones and your tens to build this number, you would have far more ones in this number. Okay, so then also thinking again about 19, we said that that one's greater, but how much greater is that one than, let's say, our 17? So remember thinking about that strategy again, putting 17 in our head and counting up until we reach 19. So 17, 18, 19. 19 is 2 greater than 17. Okay, and then we also talked about being able to put these numbers in order from greatest to least or from least to greatest. Okay, so if I want to put these numbers in order from the least number here to the greatest number over here, and I'll draw some lines so we can kind of fill those in. Okay, so we just talked about what number is greatest, what number is least, how much greater each number is. So if I wanted to put my least number here, I want you to think about which one of these numbers is the least. Okay, so 14 is my least number. Okay, and I already used that number 14, so I can cross it off and I can forget about it for now. Okay, so now I've got two numbers left. I've got 17 and I've got 19. Which one of those numbers is going to come next? So if we're going in order from least to greatest, which one is our next least number? Okay, so then that would be 17. Okay, and then our final number, we've got one number left, which is also going to be our greatest number. Okay, because we're going in order, remember, from our least to our greatest. So our greatest number is our final number, which is our number 19. So that's putting our numbers in order from least to greatest. If I wanted to flip that around and put that in order from greatest to least, okay, I'm going to do the same thing, except for now I'm going to start off with my greatest number. So looking at those same numbers before, we had our 14, our 17, and our 19. Which one of those is our greatest number? Okay, so the answer would be 19. And then I can cross that off because I already used it. Now, which number is my greatest number? Okay, so next would be 17. And then finally, I've got one number left now, which is going to be my least number if I'm putting in order from greatest to least. So my last number would be my number 14. Okay, and then we also talked about those number patterns. So I've got two number patterns here on the board. These two are definitely a little easier number patterns. I'm going to actually give you guys a couple little trickier ones when you guys do your little practice problems in a little bit. But for this first one, remember those questions I want you to be thinking about when you're doing your number patterns, okay? I want you to first read those three numbers in your head. Okay, and the first question I want to ask yourself is, are my numbers going up? That means, are they getting bigger as I'm counting? Or are they going back? Or am I getting smaller as I'm counting? Okay, so if I'm going from 14, 15 to 16, my numbers are definitely getting bigger as I'm counting. Okay, and then the second question I want you to ask yourself is, as I am counting those numbers, am I counting in order or am I skipping something in between? So when I went from 14 to 15, is that counting in order or am I skipping any numbers right here? Okay, so when I'm going from 14 to 15 to 16, that is how we count. So we are not skipping any numbers. Okay, so we're going 14, 15, 16. So now think about what's going to come next. If my numbers are going up and I'm counting in order. Okay, so my next number would be 17. So I'm going 14, 15, 16, 17. Then the final number, if I'm still counting in order, would be 18. Okay, and then thinking about our second number pattern. Okay, same questions again. Okay, so think about these three numbers and then ask yourself, am I counting up as I'm counting or am I counting backwards? Are my numbers getting bigger or are my numbers getting smaller? Okay, so if I go from 10, 11 to 12, my numbers are definitely getting bigger as I'm counting. And then that second question I want you to ask yourself is if I am skipping any numbers as I'm counting. So when I go from 10 to 11, am I skipping anything here? Or is this how I'm counting? Okay, so then I can tell from my counting that this is how I count. All my numbers are in order like on the number line. So if it goes 10, 11, 12, next is going to come 13. Okay, and then finally is going to come 14. Okay, so 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Okay, so now it's a little time for you guys to practice on your own. So what I need you to do is go grab yourself a little piece of scrap paper, okay? And I've written three numbers on my board. Also get yourself something to write with. But I've written three numbers on my board, and I'm going to ask you a few questions about some of these numbers, okay? As I ask you the questions, I want you to write your answer down on your little piece of scrap paper for checking, okay? All right, so your first one. I wrote these three numbers on my board. Which one of these numbers is greater than 16? Can you write the number on your paper that is greater than 16? Okay, next question. Which one of these numbers is less than 16? Write the answer on your paper for the number that tells you to the number that is less than 16. Okay, next. I want to know, of these three numbers, which one is the least? Will you write that number on your paper that tells me which one of these is the least? Okay, And then I want you to write the number on your paper, which one that is the greatest. Which one of these numbers is the greatest? Okay, and finally with these three numbers, I want you to try your best to put these numbers in order from greatest to least. Okay, so write these numbers in order on your paper from your greatest one first to your least one last. Okay, and then your final assignment. Okay, I wrote you guys two number patterns. Okay, so on your paper, I want you to make your paper kind of look like my board right now. And then what I want you to do with these numbers is I want you to figure out what number is going to go in those blanks. Okay, so there are 3 blanks right now on my board. I want you to think about what number is going to go in those blanks. Okay, so looking at my first number pattern. Okay, I've got this number, this number, this number, and then I've got my blank. Okay, so looking at these first 3 numbers, I want you to think to yourself, when I'm counting, am I counting up? Are my numbers getting bigger? Or am I counting down? Are my numbers getting smaller? Okay. And then I also want you to think about is as I'm counting from this number to this number, am I counting in order or am I skipping a number? Is there a number that belongs here that isn't on this board? Okay. So, and same thing with here. When you go from 13 to 15, are you counting in order or are you skipping a number? So as you go through this, think about those 2 questions and then also what number, and then write the number that's going to go in that blank. Okay, and then same thing down here for my second number pattern. Okay, I've got this number and this number, and then I've got 2 blanks on this number pattern. Okay, if I'm going from this number to this number, those same 2 questions again. Are my numbers going up when I'm counting? Or are my numbers going backwards? That means am I getting greater as I'm counting? Or am I going smaller as I'm counting? Okay, and then also thinking about as I go from this number to this number. Am I missing a number in here as I'm counting or am I counting in order? Okay, so think about those 2 questions and then put in the number that belongs to those 2 blanks. Okay, once you finish that, that's all for your little math lesson today. Look for more for tomorrow, but if you want some more time to work on stuff, I do encourage you to either choose to work on a little bit of Prodigy today or to log in and do some happy numbers, okay? All right, bye.